Good Friday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope your weekend's off to a great start. Thanks for joining us. Some news out of Berea. Browns trying to assemble that defensive coaching staff, get things rolling in the right direction. Former Browns quarterback Bernie Kosar talking about what the Browns need to do to make Jim Schwartz's defense as strong as they can be. This is from the Bernie Kosar with Hanford-Dixon show.
Jim Schwartz defense, one of the quiet things they do is they build it from the inside out. He will be privately in these meetings hammering for defensive tackles.
And you have to have them.
He will be hammering. He has been notorious for having his defensive tackles be run stoppers and be able to push the pocket and collapse the middle of the pocket. The exact stuff that we through the course of this past season.
And again, let's welcome in Jeff Lloyd from the Lockdown Browns podcast. Jeff, it's a valid point. What the Browns struggled with is historically what Jim Schwartz's defenses do well.
There's no question about it, and I think we all know, and this has gone on before the Andrew Berry regime as being general manager of this team, is this team has had a history of just not being able to have the play that a lot of teams get out of their interior defensive tackles. You look at Jim Schwartz, his early days with the Tennessee Titans had Albert Haynesworth. When he went to the Detroit Lions and Ndamukong Suh, when he was with the Buffalo Bills, Marcel Darius, when he was with the Philadelphia Eagles, Fletcher Cox, even now coming back again from Tennessee now to this job with the Cleveland Browns, Jeffrey Simmons on the interior. This is a key part to what his offense does. His defense does, rather. And the thing here is Jim Schwartz likes to put out a dominant defensive line. He wants to rush with four. He doesn't want to risk coverage by having to blitz a ton. His blitz rate is very, very low. In order to be able to do that, you need to go 7, 8, maybe even 9 deep on your defensive line, continuously rotating players, continuously mixing up the looks from your interior defenders, your interior defensive tackles, obviously your edge players. You want to get the opportunity where you can maybe get 4 pass rushers on the field at any given time in nickel and dime situations. Jim Schwartz likes to start to build his defense from the front to the back. So yes, defensive tackle, and we've talked about it for years. We've certainly talked about it a lot on this show, Dave. It is the number one priority for this regime to get right this offseason. If you got to sign 2 free agents, if you got to sign 1 big-time free agent and hammer a couple of picks here in the draft on the interior defensive line, yes, there are guys in that room who may fit a Jim Schwartz defense, but I don't think there's any defensive tackle for the Cleveland Browns right now who should feel comfortable with his roster status.
Yeah, I would agree. It'll be rotational, like you said. They're probably going to add a couple. They'll probably have 8, maybe even 9 defensive line. And he said we wave them in and do that. And it is a difference. I think they minimize the defensive tackles. You and I have talked about this ad nauseum probably last year. They're not going to be able to do that this year. They're not going to, with that system, be able to minimize defensive tackle anymore.
The key here is the biggest thing is the Browns with Joe Woods. It was always, we want to play 3 safeties. We want to get to nickel. We want to get to dime. Well, that's all well and good if you can get it done on 1st and 10, if you can stop the run. If you don't put the opposition in the position where it's 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, it's 3rd and 3, they can continue to play the offense the way they want to. If you're not going to put them in pass first situations in 2nd and long or 3rd and long, if you don't have the ability on 1st and 10 to do that, the whole plan you have basically doesn't work. It doesn't exist. And that's kind of the problem that Joe Woods had. You look at it, he played against a quarterback last year in Marcus Mariota in the Atlanta Falcons. It didn't matter that he couldn't complete any passes. It didn't matter they had no semblance of a passing game that day because they didn't have to break from the run. They need to be able to stop the run first and foremost, and then they can worry about what they want to do in nickel and dime. It's all a great idea, but until you can actually stop the run, it doesn't matter what your plan B is, your plan C is. If you're not getting plan A done, it's over.
This, more than anything, will show you how much the Browns need to add to the defensive line. So Myles Garrett, 16 sacks in 2022. That's among the league's best. The rest of the Browns combined had 18. That will tell you also why Myles Garrett was the most double-teamed man in the NFL as well.
when you look at it, and obviously there was a sunken cost there. You paid over $14 million for Jadeveon Clowney to be on this team. He didn't even finish second in sacks, had less than 3. That's an alarming number for a guy that you handed a check to for $14 million. Yes, he missed some games. He missed some games in 2021 as well, but you still got 9.5 sacks. Alex Wright, learning on the fly. Isaiah Thomas, learning on the fly. Perrion Winfrey, learning on the fly. I think these guys are all guys that can be capable of being contributors with a Jim Schwartz defense. But when you only get, when you add the numbers together, obviously you are talking about 34 sacks. That is a very, very low number. You look at a team like the Philadelphia Eagles playing in the NFC Championship game Sunday, 3 guys alone in double digits in sacks. It's huge. And it's the mix of interior pass rush, which certainly will help Myles Garrett and will certainly help anybody else that's on the edge. But you've got to get more opposite Myles, to think that Myles puts out this production while being double teamed and held, if you want to be honest, as much as he possibly is. Imagine what it'd be like if he was out there playing. Imagine if he was out there with a Fletcher Cox, if he was out there with a Javon Hargraves, if he was out there with a Brandon Graham. Imagine him out there in a foursome like that. This is the vision that Jim Schwartz wants to create on his defensive line. He wants all the players to be able to contribute, all the players to be, above average. So you can't just say, we'll double team this guy. We'll take this guy out. That's not the way he wants to play. And, defensive line play overall for a lot of fans to watch this process through free agency and maybe through the draft process. There's going to be a lot that's maybe over their heads if you're not really that deep into it. But again, it is integral. It's going to be interior players. It's going to be edge rushers. Browns have a lot of work to do. And with a guy like Jim Schwartz, at least they're going with a guy who has shown every step of the road, if you give him what he needs, he will get you what you want as your end result, a defense that will finish in the top 10 and, will not give up a ton of yards, will get after quarterbacks, will create turnovers, and most importantly, give your offense the possibility and the position to be winning games and maybe even winning games in the fourth quarter where you can go to Nick Chubb, close out ball games as opposed to trying chasing points, chasing yards late in the game with your running back being your best skill player.
Along those lines, let's take a look at some of the free agent defensive tackles that are set to hit the market. This from Spot Track. You mentioned Fletcher Cox, Hargrave, Tomlinson. You see Taven Bryan in there, Sheldon Rankins, Deron Payne, Nade, who we'll see this coming up this weekend playing. Jerry Tillery's a game. From that list, do you think there's a couple of those that the Browns, because that list covers a wide range of what their market value will be. Do you think the Browns end up with a couple of those guys?
It depends how you truly want to do it. Do you want to spend the money that a Deron Payne would be asking for? And again, whether or not he gets out of Washington without being tagged, I'm not sure. But do you want to commit $13, $14 million to one player? Or do you go with other couple options? Maybe you split that money in half and you go to 2 players. The Eagles guys, very, very intriguing. But the question is going to be, where does this Eagles run end this year? Yes, they have players on the interior. They spent a first-round pick on the interior last year. So maybe you move on of one of 2 of Hargrave or Fletcher Cox, which gives the Browns an opportunity to get a veteran in here and basically set the tone, set the mood of what the expectation is for this room going forward. Tomlinson, nice player on the interior, of course, as well. Jerry Tillery, big body. Taven Bryan, who actually, I think was by far probably the Browns' best defensive tackle as far as consistency this year. I think he fits a Jim Schwartz defense. Maybe not as a starting defensive lineman that's going to play a lot in 1st and 10, but you got pretty good pass rush. You got pretty good activity out of Taven Bryan in obvious pass rushing situations. For me, I think, and there was some rumblings that the Browns were invested in trying to maybe get Deron Payne out of Washington last year around the trade deadline. We'll see the way it works out. If you're Washington, even still, even if you don't know if there's a commitment there long term, because maybe it screws up their finances, you tag them, you get something for them, so you can move on and still continue to keep the flow that you have with your team. There's some very, very impressive names on that list, and the Browns cannot continue to do this under this Andrew Berry regime. Year in, year out, they have spent 3rd round, 4th round, day 3 picks on defensive tackle. You need a proven commodity. You just can't. And you did a disservice if you brought in Jim Schwartz and say, we'll take somebody at 104. We'll take somebody at 172. You can't do that. You brought this man here, and I guarantee you there were, promises about how you were going to address one of the biggest needs on this defense. And I doubt they bold-faced lied to the guy, because I doubt Jim Schwartz would have committed to it. He wants at least one, top-notch veteran that he can count on. And of the names you just rattled off, I definitely think one of them will be here. Most interesting one for me would maybe be Fletcher Cox. But again, we got to see the way this Eagles, season ends. If it does end up either in the Super Bowl or winning the Super Bowl, then there's always the temptation for anybody who's involved to stick around for a little bit. But there's no question. There's, as far as anything, what they're looking at right now, blinders on. It's got to be that defensive tackle list.
All right. So another avenue would be trade. In order to get the type of talent the Browns are going to want, you probably got to give up something. Could you see them trading a cornerback? That's a guy that there's depth there. They like A.J. Green, who's the fourth.
The thing is, this is a good position to be in, obviously, where the Browns are. You have Denzel Ward, long-term commitment. Anybody's saying, oh, well, maybe you move Ward. Ward is a really, really difficult contract to move. There's a lot of factors there. The other thing, for what he's being paid, the Browns understand that Denzel Ward a little bit undersized. There's going to be some missed time. Then you get to Greg Newsome, and this is where it's difficult between Greg Newsome and Martin Emerson. Obviously, both of these guys want to be the starting cornerback opposite Denzel Ward. But the way you look at it, Emerson's the biggest. He's the longest. He's the best tackler. He's feisty. I think Martin Emerson maybe created this issue this year due to his play his rookie year. I don't think anybody saw this coming this fast as far as the way Martin Emerson played this year. And again, you get to A.J. Green. This is a player that is obviously, for them, was an undrafted free agent. He certainly played above that. After that, you have a player like Thomas Graham on the roster. Thomas Graham may, look like more of a prototypical nickel than the Browns have. Greg Newsome, where he totally meant it or maybe didn't totally mean it, he'd rather be on the outside as opposed to the nickel. We'll see the way that all shakes out. But if you've got to move one of these guys for either A, some cap relief, or B, some more draft capital, or C, somebody has a defensive tackle that they have dangling out there, but they need a corner. Do you look at a guy like Greg Newsome and say, you know what? Martin Emerson's making less. Martin Emerson is maybe already on the same level that Greg is. It gives us an extra draft choice. And what we've seen, from the Browns is they seem to do well in the cornerback market. They are never out of the cornerback market. So just putting themselves back into it while maybe filling another hole is certainly something that you've got to look at with eyes wide open. And if it does turn out to the fact that, Greg Newsome doesn't truly want to be in the slot, then maybe you do have an issue, and maybe you can find a way to, fix some holes elsewhere by moving on from somebody. For me right now, I think it's a great problem to have. I truly do. And the way you saw it last year, most of the time, there were a lot of games where we only had 2 out of the 3 to start anyway. But, again, this is all stuff. And again, I know everybody wants to see what's going to happen. Combine about a month away, which is really where the all-season talking points pick up. But the Browns have a lot of avenues to, look into pursuing, switching up the roster and improving on some rooms that certainly need it.
Jeff Lloyd from the Lockdown Browns podcast and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, turn our attention to the offense, some Deshaun Watson talk. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Lockdown Browns podcast. Jason Lockenfora was on 92.3 The Fan's Afternoon Drive, trying to answer the question, can Deshaun Watson get back to that elite level?
Is Deshaun Watson the Browns' Joe Burrow? And can he be the Browns' Joe Burrow?
Oh.
I don't like that sound.
No, I'd be thinking, is Deshaun Watson the Browns' $50 million version of Jacoby Brissett? I'd set the bar there. Can he have a 12-game stretch like Jacoby Brissett did? I'm not so sure, but I would. If you're aiming higher than that, I don't know, man. You know, it looks like 2 years away, and I don't know. I'm not. I don't have any psychiatry. You know, I don't have a degree, but I will be armchair Ziggy Freud.
Did the 6 games he played this year change your mind on him?
No, I think it's mental. I think it's beyond even just football. You know, I think it's Tiger Woods-ish. Like, when you go from being sort of the face of milk and cookies and everything that's right and wholesome about the Shield, and you're propped up as the ultimate good guy among good guys, and you know what I mean, a pillar of the community, and like the last guy who'd ever be a sexual predator, and then the whole world finds out you're a sexual predator, and you're so effed in the head you can't even take, like, you can't even admit that you had a role in this. This is just something that came down from above that you were a part of. Nah, man, like, I don't even think it's about football.
Yeah, Jeff, Jeff Lloyd, Locked on Browns podcast, I don't know about all the sure, I'm sure there is a portion of it that is tough mentally. I think it's more a function of 2 years away, new teammates, completely new system. One of the things Deshaun Watson does really well is process information quickly and decide where he's going with the ball, gets really good reads. He seemed to not do that as quickly, which I guess is to be expected when you're in a new offense.
Look, you talk 2 years away. First things first, take 2 years away from doing anything that you do with regularity. You're going to go back, and basically it's going to feel like, if you're a right-handed person, you're doing it left-handed. But there is some truth to what Jason Lockenfor is saying there about the mental aspect of it. And I've gone into detail about this. Where is, your head at as far as, the way you're viewed, the way, when you get requests to do things, hey, can you sign this kid's jersey? Do you want to do that? Should you do that? There's a lot of that. And keep in mind, this is all going on where you're somewhere brand new. If he had just gone back, to Houston, to players he was comfortable with, an offense he was comfortable with, coaches he was comfortable with, it probably would have been a lot easier adaptation to the situation. But you come into a city and, let's be honest, I'm not exactly sure what the percentage was. A lot of this Cleveland fan base did not want him here. And it wasn't necessarily a Baker Mayfield thing. It was the situation that he was currently dealing with at the time. Then you throw into the fact that he got here and this team was 4-7. So, you had fans, all right, we'll go 5-1. All right, go 6-0. We'll be all right. Playoffs, da-da-da-da-da. Not taking into account the, amount of time he was away, the fact that this team, if Deshaun Watson is truly your investment in the offense, and $238 million tells you that it is, they ran the ball too much. They need to throw it more often. You need to have more faith in Deshaun Watson that he is going to be the guy that is going to get you where you need to be. Now with the full offseason, no looking over the shoulders for Deshaun Watson. He can organize with teammates any way he wants. He's going to run OTAs. He is going to be the number one guy from the time camp opens till the time camp ends. You expect that you are going to see that version of Deshaun Watson again. I don't think 6 games is fair enough to say that he is not going to be that guy. And, as we saw, there, were some struggles. He had the nice relationship with Amari Cooper. He had some relationship with David Njoku, a little bit with Donovan Peoples-Jones. Never had a way to really wind it all together. And besides those 3 skill guys, there wasn't really anybody else who contributed. So to, think that, Deshaun Watson's best days are way behind him, I think we're just going to pull the brakes on that. It seems a little unfair, after 6 games and taking into account the amount of time he was actually involved with this team since he's been here. We're just going to have to wait and give it a little more time, obviously, and none of these questions are going to be answered until September comes around.
Yeah, and again, 27 years old, it'd be different if he was 34, 35. He's 27. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yes, this is Lloyd Knowles. I've had a question that I've heard nobody ask, and that is, what happens if our quarterback goes down next year? Have they given any thought to signing the quarterback we have, or what? Thank you.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Jeff, if Jacoby Brissett wanted to come back, I'm sure they'd welcome him back with open arms. I'm guessing he might get an opportunity to be a bridge quarterback.
He should get the opportunity to be a bridge quarterback. What Jacoby Brissett, what you saw here, and, Dave, we did shows early in September. What did we talk about with Jacoby Brissett is, just let him do his thing. We all thought the defense was going to be a lot better than it turned out to be. put Jacoby Brissett in a position where he's just got to make some plays, not where you're going to have to ask him to win the game late. Obviously, more oftentimes than not, that became an issue. Jacoby Brissett, though, I think on the open market, I got to believe, you look at teams maybe like Carolina. Obviously, the head coaches haven't fallen yet. But I think Jacoby Brissett did a really, really solid job for himself as far as, where his future lies. And even still, I mean, there's a lot of backup quarterbacks in this league that make, $5-6 million with the intention that they never see the field. So it could be one of these situations where there's a team that says, hey, we like our young quarterback, but, he needs help. He needs a veteran presence, where Jacoby could go that route. But, you saw what Jacoby did this year. I don't think, there's not a possibility for him to at least, get another chance to start next season, however long it lasts, we'll see. As far as the backup quarterback, look, Kellen Mond has been on this roster since Labor Day weekend. The Browns had, they did not put him on the practice squad, exposing him to the possibility of being claimed by somebody else. Granted, he never dressed in any particular game, but any I've spoken to, the Browns seem to really like Kellen Mond. And it's difficult because we didn't get to see him when he got here at Labor Day weekend. The preseason games were over. But from everything I hear, it seems like the Browns are pretty satisfied with Kellen Mond. And then he could always go back to, the Peyton Manning days in Indianapolis. How come the backup quarterback, never takes any reps? Because if the backup because if Peyton Manning goes down, we're blank, blank. So we don't practice blank, blank.
Yeah. All right. So we've heard that DeAndre Hopkins may be available. Let's take a look at the Houston Texans receiving numbers from 2018 to 2020. This is the time that Deshaun Watson was the quarterback. So Hopkins, this is 2018, 115 receptions. Will Fuller, 32. Griffin, a tight end, 28. And you see another tight end with 7. Hopkins, 11 TD receptions that year. 2019, the next year, Hopkins was targeted 150 times, 104 receptions, 7 touchdowns. You got Will Fuller, 71 with 3. Kenny Stills, another speed guy, 55 and 4 touchdowns. Then again, a couple of your tight ends. Atkins, a couple of touchdowns. Darren Fells had 7 that year. 2020, the last year that he played there. Brandon Cooks, 81 receptions. You got Will Fuller. I forgot Randall Cobb was on that team, and again, the tight ends. So we've heard, Jeff, we've heard that Hopkins is potentially available because Cardinals are stripping it down. Brandon Cooks is probably available. Any of those guys interest you?
The problem is how much money you're going to commit to that room. And the first issue that comes to it is, where are you right now with Donovan Peoples-Jones? Donovan Peoples-Jones coming off obviously the best year, not of his career in the NFL, best season of his life. I mean, he was not this good at Michigan. Early in his career here with Cleveland, he did not put up this type of production. So if you're committing to Donovan Peoples-Jones in maybe the same type of way that the Browns committed to David Njoku, paying a salary that maybe most people don't understand, but I think for the most part, everybody understood it, seeing the way David Njoku played this year. Then the other thing is DeAndre Hopkins is 2 full years older than Amari Cooper. He makes a lot more money than Amari Cooper. It's probably going to take more than a 5th-round pick to bring in DeAndre Hopkins. And the one thing, Dave, is we haven't even gotten to what the biggest need is for this Cleveland Browns passing game. It's getting somebody who can produce deep. Even in 2020, as good as Baker was that year, we did a lot of discussions, and it felt like it was an arena league style offense. They just couldn't get the big one, the 50, 60-yard completions. They couldn't even get the attempts, for God's sakes. They need somebody who can challenge safeties. Amari Cooper's a great route runner, but he needs to be able to break these routes off and hopefully go to open space because people are drawing safety coverage, safety help deep. Donovan Peoples-Jones doesn't create a ton of separation, but is capable of getting vertical. The Browns need to find somebody that can threaten the opposing defense deep. And until they do, and look, DeAndre Hopkins, that's never truly been his game. Fantastic player, probably on a trajectory to be a Hall of Fame player. And I think moving on, DeAndre Hopkins saw that he could still be the same type of player he was without Deshaun Watson. So I'm not saying that DeAndre Hopkins is just saying, all right, well, if I'm out of here, I'll just go with Deshaun. There could be a lot of opportunities. And not to mention, there are always teams who feel they're in it year in, year out and say, well, you want to know what? If DeAndre Hopkins could be the difference for us, if I'm the Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs, whatever the team may be, who's perennial around this time of year. If they feel that's the difference, they'll find a way to make the money work. It's not an issue with DeAndre Hopkins, but I think it's just kind of more of the same, essentially, of what this team currently has at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, I would agree. The other thing with that speed element, you get the ball to somebody like that on a 3-4 yard, out route, across the crossing route, and they turn it into 20 yards. That's what this offense definitely needs. Jeff Lloyd, as always, great stuff. Thank you so much. Appreciate the time and the insight, Jeff.
All the best, Dave. Have yourself a great weekend, and we'll talk to everybody soon.
Sounds good. Jeff Lloyd. Make sure you check him out, Locked On Browns podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout, talk a little bit about defensive tackle Lance Reisland from cleveland.com with a film breakdown of some of the college players the Browns may see sitting on the board rounds 2 or 3 when they pick. Sports4CLE, talking defensive tackles in the draft when we return.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's turn our attention to defensive tackles that the Browns may be able to get in the upcoming NFL draft. Let's welcome in our film breakdown analyst, Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Lance, again, the premise that we have is these are guys that could be there at 43 when the Browns pick in the second round.
Well, yeah, you got to assume that Carter from Georgia and Breesy from Clemson are going to be gone. It also, kind of the first two that we're going to talk about are more the defensive tackle only types. With Schwartz's new scheme, they might go a little bit more with the universal guys who can play inside and out, some guys with a little longer, a little more height. All these guys have tremendous ability to recreate the line of scrimmage. They're long. Some are super athletic. So, I think these guys will all be available from round 2 on. And that's kind of, obviously, I think Jalen Carter and Breesy are the top 2 physically. But I think there's some room for some guys in the second through, later rounds that are going to be very productive as well.
All right, and let's take a look. The first one we're going to look at is Siaki Ika from Baylor, number 62 here.
Yeah, he's first and foremost, he's a massive human. He's 6'4", he's 358. And I just think regardless of the scheme, the Browns have to get bigger inside. They have to get bigger and they have to get more stout. Again, defensive tackle stats are a little bit overrated. He had 20 tackles. He had 15 quarterback hurries. He can play a little bit. I think he can be a 3-down defensive tackle. I don't think he's a guy who's going to move outside very much, but he can be a 3-down defensive tackle. He moves very well for a big guy. He can recreate the line of scrimmage. He plays with great extension. You're going to see him here extend this guy, get down line of scrimmage laterally, and make a play on the running back. And he does this pretty often. He's a really talented, athletic guy for such a big kid, and he is a massive human.
Yeah, it's impressive. You see him kind of engaged and able to move and become a factor. And the next guy, another one that we've talked about, he's from Michigan. It's Mazai Smith, another guy that's strictly a defensive tackle.
This guy, for me, over the last couple weeks has grown into my top guy in terms of guys I really like with high ceiling. So you're going to hear the word freak thrown a lot around, during combine time. This guy is a true athletic freak. He's got a 33-inch vertical leap. He's bench rep 325 for 22 reps. Most guys do that with 225. He has a 4.41 shuttle run, which is incredibly talented. These type of stats will be very, near the top, if not the top, at his position group. He's a guy who can play inside. He's a defensive tackle. I think with his ceiling, he might be able to go outside, depending on what Schwartz wants to do. He's very talented. Again, a guy with probably the highest ceiling of the guys I'm going to talk about. So his production wasn't overwhelming at Michigan, but his athletic prowess and his ability to move and recreate and extend and play with leverage and He's very scheme adjustable. He can two gap. He can play in a gap. He's very, very talented.
And again, number 58 there in those clips from the University of Michigan. All right, the next guy that we're going to look at, Keanu Benton, also from the Big Ten, Wisconsin, number 95 coming up.
You're going to see him. You're going to see the center here. So he's going to extend the center with his right arm. He plays with tremendous leverage. Now, of all these guys, I think this guy does what the Browns really struggled with most. I think he's the best at anchoring in his gap. He's another big guy. So all these guys I'm going to talk about are in the 6'3" to 6'6" range, all over 310 pounds. He's another guy. He's 6'4", 315, plays with great leverage, gets underneath this guy's pad. He's just one arm in this guy, getting his eyes in the backfield, knocks this guy back. Again, I think his best attribute is his ability to anchor in his gap and not get moved, something the Browns really need.
And again, Lance, when we're talking about guys in the second, third, fourth, fifth rounds, the Browns are looking for specific traits, and I would assume one of them is exactly that, to kind of not get moved off the line of scrimmage. If they didn't have, those 1, 2, 3 traits, they'd be a little bit higher in the draft.
Correct. Yeah. They lack something. So whether it's lateral movement, the ability to play on all 3 downs, the ability to pass rush. Obviously, it's a pass league, so everybody's looking for pass rushers. And those combination guys are really, really hard to find. So when you get down in the second, third, fourth, fifth round, you're looking for guys who can either play on first and second down and stop the run, or some guys who can get in there on third down in some nickel situations and rush the passer. These guys have the ability to do both. Plus, these guys have incredible upside, and meaning they might not be a finished product, and NFL teams think they can finish that product and make them first-round guys.
And again, the key is going to be for Jim Schwartz and Andrew Berry to get together and identify those traits that they think they need, and then go find a guy that matches. Let's look at this guy. This guy's from another program that the Browns look at is Florida, Gervin Dexter, and he is number 9 here.
Well, here's a guy that kind of fits the Jim Schwartz mold. Here's a guy that can play inside and outside. Big guy, 6'6", 312. He's probably going to fill out a little bit more. He's on the inside here. He can absolutely play on the outside as well. This guy's another athletic kind of got great freaky talent. He extends very well. I think he can be a 3-down defensive tackle. I think he's a guy that can stay in there on third down and rush the passer. He'll have to use that leverage. At times he plays a little bit high. This guy would be a guy that you're talking about upside. Maybe not always production, though he did have, 33 total tackles and 19 QB hurries this year. So he was pretty productive, but he's a guy who plays with athleticism, not always with fundamentals and being stout in the hole. So he'll learn that, but the things you can teach this guy. The things you can't teach 6'6", 312 with great extension, and this guy has it. And I really like this guy. I think he's got an incredible upside, long, plays with good leverage, and when he gets coached up, he could be a pretty special talent.
And again, another SEC product, that being Gervin Dexter. So same thing, this guy from LSU. We know Andrew Berry and the Browns have tapped into that LSU defense several times. Jaquan Roy, number 99.
Well, yeah, Jaquelin's another very athletic guy. Long, 6'4", 315. Had 38 tackles as a senior, 19 QB hurries. I got another guy, plays with great leverage, great extension. He gets rid of people. He has a really thick lower body, so that's going to allow him to stay in there, anchor in, against those big double teams in the NFL. And him, like the rest of those guys, whether they're inside guys or guys who can play inside or outside, the Browns need to get bigger. They need to get bigger inside so they can hold up and protect those smaller linebackers. And here's another guy who, again, in the short team can play inside or outside. Great leverage, great hands. His hands are very violent. Gets rid of offensive linemen very well. A great upside. Long, big kid. Great upside for this guy.
And we've talked about it a couple of times. They need to get bigger at the defensive tackle position, especially if Jim Schwartz uses that wide 9 that he's known for.
Yeah, again, if you're going to be in a wide 9, it does 2 things. We talked about it before. It's going to accentuate what the Browns do well. They rush the passer and they cover well. They're going to be in man coverage, and Myles Garrett's going to be in that wide 9. But it also accentuates what they don't do well, which is to stop the run. because it exposes those defensive tackles to double teams because the defensive end isn't there to get his hands on the tackle. So they're going to have to get bigger. They're going to have to get more stout against the run. And they just need some bigger bodies in there. They have some guys on the rosters now that can rush the passer. They need to stop the run, and they do that by getting bigger.
And again, these are the things that it's not like Jim Schwartz is going to come out and say he needs this. These are going to be the things that he's telling Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski in meetings. Hey, in order to run this the way we want to run it, we need this.
Well, I've heard a lot about scheme, and I've talked a lot about Schwartz's scheme over the last 3 weeks in terms of the wide 9 and the cover 1 and pattern cover 3 and all the things he's going to do. But there's some things that are scheme. Doesn't matter the scheme. You have to be big inside if you're going to stop the run. You got to get your hands on the offensive lineman. You got to be violent with your hands. Linebackers got to get off people. You got to be able to cover people in man coverage. So regardless of the scheme, and his scheme is very good, you have to have certain guys that fit the bill in terms of size and ability. And they're going to have to improve in terms of being able to the number one thing is they have to be able to stand up against the double teams. That's what they couldn't do this year. They couldn't hold up against the double teams. And they're never going to get to third down and long or third down in pass situations unless they can stop teams on first and second down. So regardless of scheme, they got to stop the run before they do anything else.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, really good stuff with some potential defensive tackle draftees for the Browns. We will make sure you check them out. Really good stuff, cleveland.com, and the pages of the Plain Dealer as well with the film breakdowns with Lance Reisland. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports for CLE. Bernie Kosar from the Bernie Kosar with Hanford Dixon show, talking about how far he thought the Browns were from being a playoff team this year.
You know, we say we got a great roster. We have a nice roster. We have a good roster, but we don't have a team now that invokes fear to those teams that we're looking at that are still playing right now. And I look at that quarterback list. From a football standpoint, I'm really a big fan of Deshaun Watson. I love how he throws the ball and moves and stuff. You could put him up there with him, but God, he's a half dozen Qs just in the AFC.
Yeah.
That if you said you got to play with that, I would not be disappointed.
And with that, let's welcome him, Emmett Golden, co-host of The Next Level with Emmett and Gerard from ESPN Cleveland. Emmett, appreciate the time. That's a fair point from Bernie, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, it is. There are a lot of great quarterbacks, in the NFL and especially in the AFC. And, I guess we'll see if Deshaun Watson gets back to the form that he was when he was in Houston. And if he can, then the Browns will be right there in that conversation. They just haven't had a guy of his caliber, to really compete. So great point by Bernie, but you got to at least have one. They may not be the top 3 or in the top 5, but you got to have a top 10 quarterback, and hopefully Deshaun could be that.
Yeah, you got to have a guy that you feel good about giving the ball in the fourth quarter and being able to go and win a game, and I would agree with you. What areas of this team do you think need to be addressed in free agency, so kind of more immediate fixes? What do you think they can wait till the draft because it might be able to be patchwork at that position. So positionally, what needs immediate attention?
It's got to be the defensive tackles and maybe even a defensive end. You know, after Jadeveon Clowney, his contract, ran out, and I don't believe they're going to bring him back for obvious reasons. But, they got to address the defensive line. And I think you can do that in free agency. I think you can move some money around and you'll be able to fill those spots in free agency. As far as the draft goes, I think receiver, maybe a linebacker, or two. And, they love their tight end. So I feel like every year they'll probably draft a tight end. But, right away they got to shore up, the middle of that defensive line because that was the biggest issue they had last year.
Yeah, and it almost felt like they kind of knew it might be a problem. They were looking for young guys to step up, and really none of them did. That was the most disappointing thing of it. You gave several guys the opportunity, and nobody took advantage of it.
Yeah, look, you're paying Myles Garrett, you're paying Denzel Ward, you're paying John Johnson III, so you got to save some money somewhere. And their thought was, hey, let's give guys at the defensive tackle position some opportunities, and, maybe we get lucky. Unfortunately, they didn't. And I think they're going to change the way they approach it heading into next season because I think they learned this year that that's just not going to work.
I hope so. I'm with you, and I hope so. Do you think they find a way to get a higher profile defensive tackle, defensive end through renegotiating contracts and moving money around? Or there's an awful lot of big contracts that are coming onto the books.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult due to the fact that Deshaun Watson is making so much money. But there are a lot of folks out there that believe the salary cap is a myth. And I do believe in Andrew Berry and his ability, to move things around. And I think he'll do that. I don't think they can spend a ton of money, but I do believe that they'll be able to find enough to bring in a veteran at a very important position for them this season.
All right, so we're going to take a look at a mock draft, and there are two key free agents that this mock draft will sign before we go into it. So the Browns let go of John Johnson III, signed Jesse Bates and Fletcher Cox. Let's start with that. If they are able to do that, I feel pretty good about those two things because I do think they need a true free safety. I'm not sure that plays to John Johnson's strengths.
Yeah, there was communication issues in that secondary last year, and John Johnson and Grant Delpit, they just had a difficult time, being on the same page. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did make a move to release John Johnson III, and Bates is a great safety, and, you bring up Fletcher Cox as well. I mean, then at that point, I really think the pressure falls on Jim Schwartz because how can you not be a top 5 defense when you have one of the best pass rushers, if not the best pass rusher in the NFL? You have a great corner in Denzel Ward, and then, you add those other guys with a really solid supporting cast around them. There would be no excuse for this team to not be at least top 10, but you would hope that they could be top 5 if they were to, add a couple of guys of that caliber.
Yeah, and we're talking we want to get to competent because that was something that they struggled to be this year. All right, along those lines, then after those two, this Dogs by Nature has the Browns taking Jalen Hyatt, Tennessee, a speed guy. Again, that's really intriguing. And then in the third round, coming back and getting a young defensive tackle out of Michigan, Mazai Smith, and that's another guy. I mean, if you're telling me they're going to get those 4 guys, I think I sign up for that, and I think we've addressed some areas of need pretty sufficiently there.
They do need a deep threat, and they do need a speed guy. Anthony Schwartz was supposed to be that, hasn't lived up to it yet. Not big on closing the door on young players, but he's entering a big year this year, and it just hasn't gotten it done up to this point. So bringing in some competition would make complete sense. And you're going to be paying Miles for a while, so you're going to have to draft well on that defensive line because they're cheap. Draft picks don't typically cost you a ton of money, and I think that is the formula that the Browns will use. If they're able to pull that off, it'll be great, but ultimately they got to perform when they hit the field.
Yeah, and again, it's been back-to-back struggles. How much different do you think this offense will look with Deshaun Watson after Kevin Stefanski? I'm assuming there's going to be tweaks. Do you think they're going to tweak it, and how different do you think it looks?
I think there'll be changes. I don't believe they're going to turn into the old school Houston Oilers run and shoot offense. I'm just not buying that, at all. I think they're still going to use Nick Chubb, and they're going to try to be balanced. We've always heard Kevin Stefanski say they want to be balanced and that they'll be aggressive on offense. And I take him at his word. Will there be more RPOs and use Deshaun Watson's legs a little more than they have? Yeah, I do believe that's going to be a situation. I do think they're going to move the pocket more, but I don't think it's going to be, chucking it 60 times week after week. I'm not a believer in that.
Do you think they go to more 3 wide receiver sets, less 2 and 3 tight end sets? Because that, again, would play to what Deshaun Watson does well.
Yeah, I do think that you'll see another receiver on the field more often. It's going to be hard for Kevin Stefanski to break his tight end addiction. All right, so I think you're going to see at least 2. I wouldn't be surprised at that. I don't think he's just going to flat out go, 5 wide. I don't expect to see that a lot. But, yeah, I think you will see more 3 receiver sets. And I think it'll give an opportunity for us to see what David Bell has. We highly touted guy last year, just wasn't really used a lot, was hurt in training camp. That usually sets the young guys back. So I do think we'll see more of that. But the tight ends aren't going anywhere, Cleveland.
Emmett Golden, co-host of The Next Level with Emmett and Jared on ESPN Cleveland, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll continue talking Browns, some more free agencies, as well as a look at the rookie class from this year. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Emmett Golden, co-host of The Next Level with Emmett and Gerard on ESPN Cleveland. All right, Emmett, you can sign one of the free agents that we've heard about, assuming the names that have been bandied about are out there. You only get one of the big name guys. Who's it going to be?
I think it would be Payne from the Commanders. He's a guy that you saw his relationship with Amari Cooper. So you think that would help. Maybe he would want to come here and play with a guy that also went to Alabama. And when you look at that Commanders defensive line, especially in the middle, I mean, they were arguably the best in the league. And if you can bring a guy like that in to add pressure up the middle while Myles Garrett is attacking off the edge, I think that would be a home run for this team next season.
And again, we're just saying names that are out there. We're not saying price or any of that, but I would agree with you. I think he could give the Browns exactly what they need. Another part of improving that defense has to be guys getting better because of Jim Schwartz. That's one of the reasons you hire him. Do you think that's a legitimate thing? Schwartz is a guy that's he's been a defensive coordinator for a number of years and has been very good at getting the best out of guys.
I think the first thing he's going to add is accountability. I think that's the big thing. He talked about holding your best players most accountable, and I think any successful franchise should have that motto and should use it He likes to get after the quarterback with the front four, and he likes to play man on the outside. And the Browns have great corners, but they're really good in man coverage, maybe not so good when it comes to zone. So if he's able to do that and man Denzel up on the outside and MJ Emerson and Greg Newsome, and again, they kind of get a little bit of help at the safety position, I think this could be a really good defense. Now, I expected that last year, didn't necessarily equate till towards the end of the season. So hopefully Jim can get these guys off to a quick start, because I think that'll help ease all of our minds and maybe not have us so upset at the start of the season.
Yeah, I would agree. I think as the season wore on, you kind of got the sense that the players felt like they were asking to do things that weren't their strengths. And that's always a tough situation when you're a player. All right, let's take a look. Assessing the Browns' 2022 rookie class. Let's start at that defensive tackle position. Perrion Winfrey, 13 games, 22 tackles, 1 TFL, couple pass breakouts, half a sack, 2 quarterback hits. This is a guy that was kind of uneven in what you got from him. There were flashes, though. You think this is the kind of guy that Jim Schwartz might be able to unlock some of that talent?
I think he can. I think the most important thing for Perrion is just the stuff away from the field, kind of evolving and being more mature and really being a pro, because I think that's what held Perrion back more than anything. I think he's big, he's strong, he has the attributes you want for a defensive tackle. I'm just not sure he was mature enough last year in the day-to-day, that taking your, playbook home and putting in the extra hours and just doing the stuff that you have to do to be a professional and perform at a high level. If he's able to do that, I expect him to be much better on the field.
Yeah, I would agree with you. All right, Alex Wright, a guy, again, that showed some flashes. 17 games, 28 tackles, 2 TFLs, 5 pass breakups. Those 5 pass breakups led all Browns defensive linemen. Didn't get a sack. What do you look at for him? And I mean, he's an intriguing guy, UAB, so he came from a place that wasn't against elite competition. And you did see some flashes.
Yeah, I think he, at least at this point, and you never know when a guy can take off and make a jump, but I think at this point, he's proved he can be a rotational player in the NFL. He's going to be a guy that's going to, maybe not get sacks, but going to pressure the quarterback, also going to get his hands in those passing lanes. And I can't stress how important that is, because a lot of those batted passes turned into tip drills and interceptions the other way. So he showed that he belongs in the NFL, and I'm interested to see how he grows. I expect him to be with the team for a few years, though.
Yeah, and again, I'm interested with all the young linemen to see. That's Jim Schwartz's specialty. So let's see what he can do, helping them take it to another level. Cade York, another one, and that's a guy that was, again, very uneven. The first game he hits the 58-yard game-winning kick. Everybody's excited. The rest of the season really inconsistent and missed a couple of extra points. Kickers are a strange breed. You just got to be patient with them.
Yeah.
And Cleveland, the First Energy Stadium on that lake, is not an easy place to kick.
No, it's not. It's not an easy place to kick at all. And like Cade York, you brought it up, was great in that first game, struggled throughout the year, and I guess it's expected. The thing that hurt him is he hit a game winner in the first game of the year. So we were like, okay, this is going to be every week. He's going to do this all the time. So when he did struggle, you almost like, hey, we were bamboozled. And it's like, well, no, not really. He's a rookie kicking in one of the most difficult stadiums in all of sports. So I think the more reps he gets, the better he will be. As a huge leg, and the Browns are almost always in field goal range once they, kind of hit the 45. I expect him to be better next season. So it didn't really surprise me that he struggled the way he did. Yeah,
and the fact that he was a 4th-round pick, again, that's, people are like, he's supposed to be perfect. We took him in the 4th. So right. I get it. A guy you mentioned earlier, David Bell, wide receiver, again, banged up. He did play 16 games, or was at least active for him. 35 targets, 24 catches, 214 yards. His role in the pass game limited in year 1. But I think that'll change with Deshaun Watson. your thoughts on Bell and just some of the things you saw with him.
Yeah, I agree. He has, the attributes that you want in a receiver outside of the 40 speed. And, just throughout my time, covering sports and even having a son that plays high school sports, the 40 times can be deceiving. I know he ran a real bad 40, but he still finds a way to get open, on the field. So a few more opportunities, I think, would go a long way for David Bell. I'm not ready to write him off and just go, oh, this isn't a guy, let's find a replacement. The more reps he gets with Deshaun, the better, and the more 3-4 receiver sets you see will give him more opportunities. So I'm very interested to see what type of jump he makes from year 1 to year 2.
Yeah, it will be interesting because I do expect more 3 wide receiver sets. Emmett Golden, as always, man, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much.
Hey, thanks for having me. This was fun.
All right, Emmett Golden. Make sure you check him out. He's co-host of The Next Level with Emmett and Gerard. That is on ESPN 850 Cleveland. Each week, in conjunction with the Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program, we recognize a role model high school student from somewhere in the state of Ohio. Today, we head to St. Martin de Porres High School near downtown Cleveland to meet Ishawn Patterson, a guy who is getting it done in the classroom due to some hard work. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is proud to salute Ishawn Patterson, this week's Shining Star. A grade point average above a 3.5 is always an accomplishment to be celebrated. For Ishawn Patterson from St. Martin de Porres High School, his good grades are even a little more special.
He went from a 1.7 GPA to a 2.7 at the end of quarter 2, and he actually ended up not having any semester failures, so he had nothing below a C coming out of semester 1, so he has no summer school, which was the goal initially, and he currently has a 3.8 for quarter 3.
I see my grades wasn't looking too good, so I just feel like I decided I needed to change it because I didn't want that to, be on my I didn't want it to hold me back from the future, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, and from getting into colleges.
The dramatic upturn in grades is a combination of a couple of factors for Ishawn.
It was a lot of work on his part. He went to office hours regularly. He would check in with us daily, even though he didn't have to. So he would either meet with me or he would meet with Ms. Robinson, and he would talk to us about the fact that, he wasn't necessarily caught up in a class, but he was making sure to meet with them after school. He encouraged, his teachers to meet with him regularly as well, just so that they can check in with him. So it wasn't just him being like, I need to meet with you, but also knowing that he needed to tell his teachers, I'm struggling, and if you can check in with me regularly, I would appreciate that. And his teachers have seen a lot of growth in him, and they're really proud of him so far.
I usually do good on the test. It's just the work, the regular work, I just, sometimes I just don't turn it in. I guess I'm just bad at time management.
Patterson has a 3.8 GPA and is proud of the work he put in to get his grades up. As far as his favorite subject goes?
Probably math.
Why?
I don't know. Math has always been kind of easy. It's not the it's kind of the simplest because it's just numbers compared to English and stuff.
As part of the curriculum at St. Martin de Porres, students are part of a work-study program 5 days a month with business partners in the area to pay for a part of their tuition.
Cleveland Public Library, the main one, downtown. It's cool because I work in the foreign literature section, so basically it's all these different languages like Japanese, Chinese, all that, and it's fun because, it's a different world basically because it's all types of, different cultures and stuff like that.
Last year, Patterson was part of the track team where he learned a lot about himself.
It pushed me past my, it got me out of my comfort zone, and it challenged me really because all the running that they had me doing, But it was fun. It was pretty fun.
Patterson still has not decided what he wants to study after high school, but he wants to do everything he can to keep his grades up.
Do my work, really. Just do my work. And time management, work on my time management, and ask for help like how I did last quarter. But don't wait till the last second, though, because that's kind of what I did.
I think he has a bright future ahead of him. I think that he is gaining a lot of the skills that he needs moving forward. And even though he's struggling now, this is the time to struggle. When you have all the support that you need, and we can guide you even when you're struggling, so that when you move forward in life, you know, he can do anything. And he knows that even if he struggles, he can still make it out on the other end.
If you know a student who deserves recognition, we want to hear about them, and you can nominate them completely online. Go to OhioLottery.com. Find the About section. Click on Partners in Education. There you will see links to nomination forms. Nominate that student as an academic all-star, and they could end up being featured as our next shining star. Well done, Ishan Patterson. He was one of our academic all-stars. Great job getting the grades up. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.